What happened to Jimmy Hoffa, and what was John Gotti like?
Okay. I'll tell you this about Jimmy Hoffa. About 3 years ago, a guy that I knew really well gets out of prison, contacts me. Mike, I got to talk to you. Come to New York. I want to see you. His name was Peter. I won't give you his last name. And he tells me, he says, Mike, there's a guy in prison that you know very well. He told me this story. He wants to relate it to you. He's never getting out of prison. He's doing life. But if you ever do this story, he wants you to take care of his family. I said, okay. Basically, it was the story of Hoffa's murder. And this was one of the shooters. Guy I knew well, I believe him. The guy, Peter, that told me, I said, look, I want you to put all of this on tape because he was sickly and I knew he wasn't going to last. So he puts it all on tape. I have the tapes, tells me the whole story. Peter dies. I got the tapes. Here's the one catch. The body, I don't believe anybody's ever going to find Hoffa's body because I always say this, it's wet. That much I can tell you. And so people have come to me, Michael, you got to tell this story. I said, you know what? It's been told so many times, but if you don't find the body, it's just another story. So why would I bother telling it? I had somebody, a production company that said they would put up $1 million to go search for the body. And that in itself would be the story. And I said, you know what? Let's see what happens. I don't know if I want to do this because I don't want to be one of these guys that claim that I know where Hoffa is. And then it turns out to be a dead end. I believe the story. I have it on tape. It was, to me, very credible. But we'll see what happens. So that's all I can say about
All
it.
right. And so he's wet. So he's at the bottom of some body of water, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
All right.
And
So
I
it's not.
believe that because, everybody, there's been a couple of guys. I will tell you this, The Irishman, the movie, absolutely not true. Sheerhan was not one of the shooters. And that movie, he's been debunked, by credible sources. Wasn't true. Good movie, just wasn't a true story. But so what was I gonna, we'll see what happens. But I don't want to be one of those guys that just tell another story because how many people have said they know where the body is and they've investigated, dug up places, and they never found it. So I don't want to be one of those guys. But what was the second question?
Oh, so he's not. So he's not in concrete. He's wet, is what you're saying.
That's what I believe to be true.
Okay, gotcha. Gotti, what was Gotti like?
John was very difficult to deal with in business. He had a tremendous ego. He could never lose an argument. You had to, if you had any kind of dispute with him and you had to try to outsmart him to make him think he got the best of you, but you got what you wanted. He was very difficult to deal with in a business. He wasn't a business guy at all. And, but on a social level, he was a lot of fun. You go out at night, have a drink with him. He was he was fun that way. So I didn't, I wasn't one of his best friends. I wasn't in his crew, but we got along. I had a couple of disputes with him, and it wasn't enjoyable. Let's put it that way.
Okay, and your dad knew Al Capone. Is that right?
My dad said that on a visit to Chicago in I think 28 or 29, when he was a kid, that he met Capone. I don't think he met him here when he was in Brooklyn, rather. I think he met him out in Chicago, but he was a kid at that time. So he didn't have anything to do with him. But he knew some of the other guys. He met Lucky Luciano. He knew Costello. He knew those guys. He met them.
And what was the story? I mean, Capone was run out of New York City and then went out to Chicago. What was the real story behind Capone?
Well, that's it. I mean, he settled in Chicago because he was brought out there by another friend of his at that time. And then, he fell into it with Prohibition. Listen, Prohibition is really what gave the mob the strength at that time. I mean, the money was, in those days, it was astronomical. And so, money is power in a certain way. You got money, you buy politicians, you get a big crew around you. And you're able to control a lot of things. So Prohibition made Capone. Let's put it that way. The government didn't realize that they gave the mob the strength in these laws. People want what they can have, and you provide a service. And Capone used to say that. I just provide a service for the people. I give them alcohol and liquor. So he did certainly well out there. But look, the government went down on him in a big way. So what happened there? Even Al Capone, who had politicians under his belt. He had all the money that he could have needed. He had a big crew around him. What happened? He goes to jail. Doesn't pay.